we're talking about this is because this is really key to how to lose weight, belly fat. Why, especially women over 40 are so interested in why they used to never have a jelly roll and all of a sudden they do around their waistline, right? And so all of the weight loss programs that are out there now, from Jenny Craig to LA Weight Loss to Nutrisystems, they're all focusing on blood sugar because we now know that that's key in order to lose weight. It's not necessarily how much fat you're taking in, it's more the carbohydrates / sugars, the types that you're taking in. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit. Does anyone here know already about blood glucose and sugar and carbohydrate metabolism and some about it? Everybody has a little. Do you know? Barbara knows more. She's still in denial about the sugars and what you can and can't have.
Aren't we all?
Yes, we are, including myself. I mean, you can lie, but the mirror does not.
If they could give us something else to take when you're under stress that you don't grab for immediately, like chocolate.
Yeah.
They'd be billionaires by now.
It is true. I mean,
They always come out with a Weight Watchers pill and a weight pill, and then they say, oh, but there's this side effect and that side effect, the other side effect.
I want something when I'm at work, I'm under stress, I want chocolate. I need chocolate, and if I don't get it, I keep thinking about it.
I've got a good idea. If they could invent like a mirror that glasses you could wear a mirror here so you could see your butt all the time. Oh, I know. There's nothing more motivating than
It could
that.
be a new app.
I like that.
With a fluorescent light shining on it.
Yeah.
Dimples? Yeah.
That's like the three-way mirror and what that's
Sound
on.
really
Sorry, Mark.
Poor guys.
So, I'd like to move on. Okay, so
Oh, my
glycemic
goodness.
index. This is important that we all kind of get the concept of what this is. Glycemic index, it was developed to help people with diabetes initially, to maintain better control over their blood sugar. So they used to look at that all the time, but only really as it pertained to diabetics, so that your blood sugar didn't go up, it didn't go down too fast, too slow, that kind of a thing. They never really used to associate it with dietary needs and why people couldn't lose weight. You would used to say like, well, all I'm doing is eating a baked potato at dinner with a piece of fish, and I'm eating a sandwich, and I'm not having, and you couldn't ever figure out why you weren't losing weight. But if you go back and you look at all the dietary things you've been doing, it always shows a lot of carbohydrates that have what are called high glycemic indexes. So it was developed to help diabetics. It's a scientific way of measuring how quickly the body breaks down carbohydrates, which are sugars, for those of you that don't know that, in food and puts it into the blood, into blood sugar. So they call blood sugar glucose because that's the mostly transported sugar that your body uses in your bloodstream, is glucose. The body needs sugar, but not all sugars are equal. And the trick is to knowing what sugars provide the most fuel without an unreasonable demand to our bodies. So in other words, how much do we have to eat in order to get the maximum or the minimum amount of benefit from it? You don't really need to eat an entire plate of pasta to get carbohydrates. You could theoretically, because it's so dense with sugar, eat a small plate of pasta, through Weight Watchers. And you're fine on that. Glycemic index provides a simple and scientific way to basically distinguish the good sugars from the bad sugars. In other words, the good carbohydrates from the bad carbohydrates. And carbohydrates can be anything from fruit to pasta to wine, alcohol. Anything that can be broken down into a sugar is considered a carbohydrate. Does everybody kind of understand that and know that? Okay. So glycemic index, it ranks carbohydrates by how they raise your blood sugar over a 2 to 3 hour period of time. Glycemic index measures the blood as it rises and falls over 2 hours after consumption of 50 grams of a very specific carbohydrate, maybe an orange, a banana, a piece of bread, and then it compares it to the rise and fall caused by 50 grams of pure glucose over 2 hours. So remember what I said before, they compare it to glucose because that's the sugar that's in your blood that you use for fuel, that you use for brain function, that you use for muscles. The index of glucose is always 100, so all foods are compared to that number. So that would mean a high glycemic index is at 100. That's pure sugar. If you were to take a packet of sugar and dump it to your mouth, it would be 100. How do you measure the glycemic index? They use a scale. What's considered low glycemic is 55 and below. So these would be all your vegetables, your broccoli, your kale, your cauliflower, spinach, and your non-starchy fruits. Blueberries, apples, oranges. Medium glycemic index is 55 to 70. These go up a little bit more. So these are things like legumes, peas, beans, whole unprocessed cereals and grains. High glycemic index is 70 and above, and these are things like refined grains, cakes, cookies, cereals, potatoes. So I have down here for slow, sustained blood sugar, our goal is to eat the low to medium glycemic index carbs, and always to avoid the high glycemic index carbs. Easier said than done. Why does glycemic index matter? High glycemic index foods quickly digest and are turned into glucose in the blood, causing a rise in insulin. Whatever glucose is not used as immediate fuel or storage in the liver and muscle gets turned into fat. So for those of you that don't know biochemistry, and a lot of people don't, carbohydrates do have a conversion into fat. It's called lipogenesis. You eat too many carbs, it can convert into fat. And the same thing with protein, actually. I mean, there is a point where your body, when you take in more calories than you are able to expend, will turn everything into fat. It's just easier for carbohydrates to get turned into fat than protein. If you eat a high glycemic index with fat, none of the fat gets used because your bloodstream is too flooded with sugar, and this gets stored as fat. So if you eat something that has a lot of butter and a ton of linguine, your body is going to be so flooded with sugar that any fat that you have in it and any extra glucose you consume, all of it immediately gets stored to fat. Insulin does such a good job of storing blood sugar as fat that as soon as your blood sugar begins to drop, you're hungry again. So that's the issue, is you take on something, you dump a ton of sugar, the body says, oh crap, what am I going to do with all this blood sugar? This is a problem with diabetics. They don't have enough insulin, or the insulin they do have is not getting it into the cells because their cells have been so abused by too much sugar all the time. Now they say, that's insulin, I'm used to that. I'm not opening my door to let glucose in anymore. So now the blood glucose stays in the blood, and the blood gets thick, and then it starts damaging the capillaries. That's why diabetics have eye problems. They've got kidney problems. They go blind. They lose their legs because the capillaries and the blood vessels get so congested with the glucose, it can't pass over, it can't convert into cells, it just stays in the blood, and that damages their vessels, and they start losing their eyesight, they start losing their legs, their feet. Continuing to flood your body with high levels of sugar followed by high levels of insulin makes your body less efficient at processing these sugars, and you become hypoglycemic or insulin resistant. So if this were a lecture on diabetes, we get more into this. There are different reasons people have diabetes. One is because they don't have enough insulin. The other is that they've made so much insulin over the years and abused the sugar so much that now the insulin they are making is not working, and they're producing more and more and more insulin, and it's still not working. If this continues, your pancreas becomes completely exhausted and shuts down insulin production, and diabetes begins. What does the pancreas do anyway? Produces two hormones in response to the food you eat. So if you learn nothing else, know that the pancreas produces two hormones with respect to sugar. Insulin, which we're talking about, is the hormone responsible for storing fat and producing energy from sugar. But forget even about the last part about producing energy from sugar. As far as I'm concerned, insulin is a fat storage hormone. So you want to do as much as you can to not secrete too much insulin. You're going to secrete insulin when you're eating any kind of sugar, but you want to make sure that you're going to manage what kinds of sugar, how fast you're dumping it into the bloodstream, because the insulin is going to be on it like white on rice, and it's going to put it right into fat. Insulin is secreted in response to the carbohydrates that you eat, any carbohydrates. Okay, now the second hormone is glucagon, the hormone that promotes the mobilization and utilization of fat for energy. So you can see why you want more glucagon. Insulin is actually storing fat. Glucagon is mobilizing it to be used as energy. Glucagon works to counterbalance insulin. Glucagon is the only hormone that allows stored body fats to be released into the bloodstream to be burned by your muscles as energy. Protein consumption produces glucagon. These two pancreatic hormones are inversely proportional. So if you have an increase in insulin, you've eaten too much carbohydrates, too much pasta, too many candies, cookies, sweets, you're going to store fat. If you have, when you have increase in insulin, you're going to have a decrease in glucagon. So you're going to be storing fat and not burning it. And this is inversely proportional. Consider that if you ate a lot of protein and just a little bit of carbohydrates, your glucagon would go up. You would be burning fat, and you would be decreasing the amount of storage in fat. Does everybody understand that? Hey, Vicky, come on in.
Sorry.
Come on in. Yeah.
I just wanted to watch the cord here.
Okay.
Sorry to
Okay,
interrupt.
so,
That's okay.
no problem, we just started. We're just talking about insulin and glucagon and pancreas, blood sugar issues. Okay. So why is excess insulin a problem? We know that excess insulin is a fat storage hormone. It is produced when you eat too much sugar. It can raise blood pressure. It can clog the arteries. It can create cardiovascular disease. It can overtax your pancreas. It can promote growth of cancer cells. It can stop ovulation, and it can dim your memory. These are just some of the things that insulin can do with the body. How sugar becomes fat. Okay, so this is a story of what happens. Your body will transform carbohydrates that you eat into glucose for energy to sell. So you eat the pasta, you eat the spaghetti sauce, or spaghetti, your body says, oh, okay, so there's some sugar, carbohydrates, it's going to be broken down into small chains of glucose, small cells of glucose. When the cell becomes full of extra glucose that has been put there by the insulin, because it's the only way it gets into the cell, it's sent to the liver, where it then becomes a storage fuel, which is called glycogen. And glycogen is a good thing. The body will store glycogen in the liver for immediate fuel. It will store glycogen in the muscles. Once you reach full storage of glycogen, meaning the liver is just stuffed, it's got too much glucose that's been converted into storage glycogen, it's then sent back to the liver again, where it now becomes triglycerides and gets stored as fat. So your body, God didn't he's not stupid. Everything he did was for a purpose, right? He knew. If you take in the glucose, it's good. It's a good thing. You need it for storage. But if you overdo it, the body will begin to produce triglycerides, which is stored as fat. We have a minimal amount of storage for glycogen. We don't have a minimal amount of storage for fat. We can just keep storing it and storing it and storing it. And the problem with fat is that scientifically they know that once you've created a fat cell, you cannot make it go away. You can shrink it down as little as you want, but you can't make it go away. So that's why if you've ever put on a certain amount of weight and you lose weight, you find that it's easier to put weight on again. Because the only way you're going to get rid of those fat cells is to suck them out through lipo, HCG diets. Theoretically, the theory is that it eats up its own fat cells, so you can mobilize it that way. But in theory, you cannot get rid of your own fat cells once you've created them. And this is the issue with little kids now. We're putting on more and more weight. I mean, they're little and they're overweight. What's going to happen? We all know as we get older, it gets harder to lose weight, and it's easier to put it on. So this is the issue. Okay, simple and complex carbohydrates. So what are they? We're talking about carbohydrates and sugars. A simple sugar is 1 or 2 units of sugar. It's basically that, I'm taking, this is a sugar and this is a sugar, and I'm putting it together. There's just 2 units. A complex is that I've got 3 of these put together. So it makes sense that the simpler the structure, the more quickly it is broken down into glucose and made available to the body. So maybe this is 1 molecule of glucose and this is 1 molecule of glucose. You put it together. This is a piece of candy you bought at CVS and you're sucking on it right now. It doesn't take much for your body to cleave these 2 things, and now it's just free-floating glucose in the blood cells. Immediate storage. You get hyper. Wow, I feel really good. What was that I just said? I want to keep on eating that stuff. But your body senses and says, oh no, glucose floating in the cell, send out some insulin, we got to take this and put it into the cell for energy. It does that, and now all of a sudden the high you had crashes. So now you're like, oh, I feel really tired. Give me a cup of coffee, which by the way stimulates more insulin. It's going to not want you to have more sugar. So it just becomes like a vicious cycle. But if you've got 3 of these things, or 4 of these things put together, it's going to take the body longer to rip them apart and digest them. So that stays in your bloodstream. You've got some energy. Oh, good. I had just a little bit of pasta with a piece of chicken. I've got some energy. I feel pretty good. The body's slowly digesting, cleaving. This stays in the bloodstream a little bit longer. So now your blood sugar goes slowly down instead of the crash and burn that we've all heard about. We need this glucose as preferred fuel for our brains and bodies for daily activity and exercise. See, because the brain prefers glucose. That's really the only fuel that it likes. With the exception of ketones, which we're not going to get into. That's all about Atkins and fat burning and that kind of a thing. But the body, if given its choice, is going to prefer glucose every single time, which is why there's a storage for glycogen in the liver and there's a storage for muscles. It wants to break it down and make it immediately turn it into glucose. Okay, so let's talk about the simple carbohydrates. There's two types of simple carbohydrates. There's monosaccharides, which is just one sugar floating around. And there's only three kinds: glucose, which we've been talking about, fructose, which is fruit sugar, and galactose, which is found in milk.
Milk.
That's exactly right. Three basic sugars. If you take a biochemistry class in college, they're going to teach you that. There are no other sugars that are basic: glucose, fructose, and galactose. That's it. It's found in fruits, vegetables, and milk. Then you've got a disaccharide. Two single sugar units linked together. And examples of those would be glucose and fructose equal table sugar, the white sugar that you know of. Glucose and galactose, which makes lactose. That's the milk sugar. And some people don't have, we know, lactase to digest the lactose. So you'll get gas and bloating. That's a different issue. And then you've got two units of glucose and glucose, which is maltose, which is in beer. That's where you get the beer belly. And the reason why you get the beer belly is because you have insulin receptors on the cells on the stomach have a big affinity for maltose. And it goes right there when you drink it. So you can see that these get broken down, and you know, every single one of them has glucose in it. And I believe God made that for a reason. That's the preferred fuel for our bodies. Does everybody kind of understand this? Not too confusing, is it? Okay. All right, complex carbohydrates. So these are now the better carbohydrates I want you to focus on. 3 or more single sugar units made up of glucose, fructose, and galactose. So back to those 3 basic sugars, but now you've got them in long chains. 2 types. There's the starchy carb, includes wheat, rice, corn, bread, potatoes, oatmeal, pasta, white, and whole grains. All starches are plant materials. Okay, so in nature, all of that, if you look at it, it's all plants. There's no animal starches. Fibrous carbohydrates include asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, onions, mushrooms, spinach, and peppers, and can be found in most varieties of dark green leafy veggies. The ones that most people never want to eat because they're boring, right? They're not much fun. Okay, so what's the difference between simple carbohydrates and the complex? As the simple carbohydrates are already in their simplest form. Therefore, they're more easy for your body to digest and they get into your bloodstream quicker. Not very good for controlling blood sugar. It causes blood sugar spikes. Complex carbohydrates, due to their longer chains of carbohydrates, fiber, and starch, are not as easily digested as simple. They must be broken down before they absorb into the bloodstream. So they ask your body to work harder to break them down. If your body's working harder, it means your metabolic rate's going up and things are happening. You've got sustained energy over a long period of time. How to tell if it's simple or complex? The rule of thumb is the higher amount of fiber, the more complex carbohydrate the food is. So that's pretty easy. You know, if you're sitting there eating a donut, you know there's no fiber in there. Right. Right. And so, and they teach you that in Weight Watchers too, don't
Right, right. Well, when you calculate it on the calculator, that's one of the questions they ask you is
they? Do they still use fiber as a point?
Yeah. I mean, that lowers the point value if it has a lot of fiber in it.
So Weight Watchers does what? Carbohydrates?
Protein, carbohydrates, protein, fat, and fiber.
But the biggest one is how much fiber and fat
yeah,
it has.
the more fiber that lowers the point value.
Yeah, which is good, right. Okay, so basically this is a really simple, you've got the complex carbohydrate. If you take out the fiber and starch, you just have a simple carbohydrate. It's really easy, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Everybody gets it? Mm-hmm. It's okay if you say, I promise nobody will laugh, right? It's pretty easy. Simple carbohydrate is just a complex carbohydrate minus the fiber and starch.
So the starch is not, isn't the starch a complex carbohydrate?
Yes,
Yeah. Simple is just sugar.
But that, does it tend to stay together as opposed to the simple carbohydrates, or is it ultimately
No, it gets broken down too. Those are things that,
just takes longer.
cellulose and fibers that it takes longer. It's hard for your body to break that down. That's why you want to add it in, because it gives you that, we'll get to that part, but it makes you feel full and, yeah, it's good. Okay. So code words for simple sugars. And so hint, the word syrup, sweetener, anything ending in OSE is a sugar. These are all codes. People are like, oh, there's no sugar in here. Oh, it's got, I see, maltose in it. That's not a sugar. Or maltodextrin. Maltodextrin, in fact, is, I can't stand that stuff. That is like another code word for MSG. You see maltodextrin in something, don't eat it. Stay away from it. Fruit juice, if it says fruit juice concentrate, fruit is sugar. And it's concentrated, which means they've taken out all the fiber and
Right,
all,
because
and
fruit juice has points
it's just
and
pure
fruit
sugar.
doesn't. Yeah.
And that's my other issue with things like, not that I'm not a juicer proponent, but I can't stand juicing and you see all the beautiful fiber. I'm like, no, it's like gold. You know, have you ever juiced and you're putting all that stuff in the fiber and they're like, and then throw the fiber out. I take it and I put it back in or I eat it. And I just have a little bit of juice, because think about what you're juicing. I know people who go to Smoothie King, and myself, I remember when I first started learning about this stuff, I would juice and I'd be like, God, I'm getting so fat. How can I be getting fat? What I'm doing is juicing. It's just pure sugar you're downing. It's nature's candy. Fruit, especially, is nature's candy. But vegetables too. If you take the sugar and you pull the vegetable and pull the fiber out, you're just left with water and sugar, and that's it. So if you decide that you want to go on a juice fast, or you're going to have about a week or two and want all the good phytonutrients out of vegetables, just do a little bit of juice. I mean, like literally like a 6-ounce glass or something like that. But don't do one of these big things thinking you're doing your body good, because you're not. You're going to get some belly fat really quick, and you'll be surprised.
Is that different if you use the whole?
Yes. Yeah, because you've got all the fiber. Yeah, the glycemic index of an orange is much lower than a glass of orange juice.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, if somebody's going into a diabetic coma,
They give them orange.
drink some orange juice, because it boosts your blood sugar really quickly. Examples of foods containing simple carbohydrates are table sugar, corn syrup, which is in everything now, fruit juice, candy, cake, bread made with white flour, pasta made with white flour, white as opposed to whole grain or brown rice, because all of that still has the fiber in it. That's okay. It's okay, but you still want a small amount. Still carbohydrates. Soda pop, all baked goods made with white flour, most packaged cereals. This is my little attempt at humor. For those of you that say that chiropractic isn't, has no research behind it. See, like
You better watch what I'm going to show that to.
Correct.
They're going to say what they will about chiropractic, whether they see that or not. Okay. So why is high fiber good? Soluble fiber. So it grabs a bad cholesterol and removes it from the body. Soluble fiber are things like oats, barley, fruits, vegetables, flaxseed, psyllium. For those of you that were here at the detox seminar, the little thing of psyllium fiber, that's soluble fiber, and it stabilizes your blood sugar. You have taken it?
Well, yeah, I'm taking fiber because I was having an issue. So,
Right, yeah.
I
and
use
it
like
helps you go to
half
the
of
bathroom,
it, right?
but it makes you feel full because it just stays in your bloodstream for a really long period of time. You get to like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, I'm not even hungry. I mean, it's a good thing.
Can psyllium be irritating?
It can initially.
Yeah, I
Because I tried it
reduced
years
mine
ago.
to
Initially.
half. Yeah, I reduced mine to half because then I was.
But
Do you
there
journal it? Does your system get used to it then? Is that what you said in the beginning?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can, which is why I always start you doing one serving in the morning for 4 days, and make sure you're drinking a lot of water, because when you dump that fiber into your system, if you're not used to it, you're going to get constipated at first. It's supposed to make you go to the bathroom. You're like, what the heck? But once your system gets used to it, you're rocking and rolling. So once you're pooping,
And how do you take it?
various ways. You can either take capsules or you
Like
can,
you know my
And then
diet, so
yes,
it'd be good for me.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay,
You
all right.
can pour it.
No,
You
no
can pour it. They say no juice, but I pour it into juice. You know.
Yeah, make it taste like something.
Well, it doesn't have it. Well,
Has no
the
flavor.
powder doesn't have any taste.
Mm-mm.
So,
And I've got a capsule that if you don't wanna do a shake or something, it's got a little bit of aloe in it and some psyllium and, flaxseed, and there's things to help the gut. It's really good. I mean, if there's one thing that you can do, and not only that, it goes into the colon, and I mean, it's not just psyllium. I mean, you can get this through fruits and veggies, oats, you can eat a thing of oatmeal every day. Sometimes in the morning, I got into the habit of making a little bit of, the steel cooked oats. And they're not quick, they take a while to
Right,
make,
right,
but the
yeah.
glycemic index is lower because you are cooking them longer. And then I just add 2 eggs to it, but it makes you feel really full. You don't just have to do psyllium fiber, there are other ways to do it. And then, so that's soluble fiber. But then you've got insoluble fiber, known as cellulose, that does not dissolve in water. Instead, it soaks up water, adding bulkness and softness to the stool. This is especially good at preventing constipation. Some of you might, and it's in things like beans, a lot of beans, sweet potatoes, berries, bran cereal, barley, which has both actually. You might find if you eat beans, the next day you're able to really go to the bathroom good. You might be a little gassy bloaty that day, but nothing that Beano or a good digestive enzyme won't take care of. But this one really helps you go to the bathroom because it actually pulls the water up. So both of these are really, really good. Insoluble fiber also contributes to the feeling of fullness after eating.
When you say it pulls the water up, are you talking about into your intestines?
Mhm,
It pulls water into
Yep.
your intestines?
Yep. The bottom line, fiber decreases absorption rate of glucose, allowing feeling of fullness and slow sustained release of glucose into the blood. So, going back to the example of the juicing, and that, it's got more fiber, so you feel fuller longer when you eat an orange versus drinking a glass of orange juice.
What is that tablet that you say to take before you eat? So I take,
Probiotic.
The enzyme?
it's a tablet, shoot,
Like the enzyme.
that helps you, and you say you keep it in your purse.
Oh, the
Digestion.
enzymes.
That's the enzymes.
yeah, yeah.
That's a
Is that-
digestive
is that-
enzyme. No, but that's a good point, and that digestive enzymes I recommend them to everybody, especially everyone over 40, because one of the things that we lose, enzymes are just proteins, that's all they are. And as we start to age, they get what's called denatured. You can denature protein by cooking it too much, things like that. But we lose the cells that make those digestive enzymes. Most of the digestive enzymes come from the pancreas. You get bile that comes from the gallbladder to help digest fat. But if you're not making any lipase from the pancreas, you're not going to really digest fat at all. So a good digestive enzyme will have all the pancreatic enzymes, because going back to what we said, most of the people are exhausting their pancreases because we're just overdoing it with sugar and, I like wine, I admit it, I'm not a eunuch, I have my little, vices and whatever, and that puts a lot of pressure on the pancreas to do what it needs to do, so it can only help us, I believe, to digest food and get assimilate the nutrients that we need, not to mention the food sources, what we talked about last time, how bad they are. So most of the food, if we lived in the caveman times, we wouldn't need digestive enzymes. All the food would already have the digestive enzyme. Fruits and vegetables have their own enzymes. So if you're sitting down to eat a salad, maybe you don't need a digestive enzyme if you've got a good enough healthy system, because you're eating some enzymes. That's what raw food is all about. It's just pure enzymes that you're eating. It's not been denatured by heat. No chemicals have been dumped on it. A lot of people that have raw food, they look like they're 20 years old and they're 60 because their bodies are just so, digestion, when you think about that, you eat so much at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're asking your body to constantly work. That's why fasting diets are so good. You're just giving your body a break, so the digestion can say, oh, let me clean up a little bit. Thank God she's not putting anything else into the old, pie hole. So, it's recommended. It makes sense though, doesn't it?
And it gets tougher every decade.
yeah.
If only they teach you this at 10.
Well, you wouldn't listen.
You wouldn't listen anyway.
Because you're gonna live forever.
Just 10 years we could, we'd be so much smarter.
Exactly. You wouldn't listen. So what's recommended is 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day. And some patients will be like, oh no, I eat all raw foods anyway, and that's great. And they probably don't need a supplement. My feeling is if you can digest it, whether you're going to take a supplemental fiber, you should still be giving, it's still, even if you just decide to increase fiber by doing fruits and vegetables, you still might get a little gassy and bloaty, and so, or are you adding legumes or beans or whatever, until your system's able to kind of get used to it. So if you decide, that's it, I'm leaving here, I'm doing raw foods, you know, don't get mad at me if you're really bloated, you know, so ease into it, yeah.
The digestive enzymes, I found, you know, I always get that gas thing. You know, sometimes I'm taking those pills at like 2 o'clock in the morning because that gets rid of it. I finally
What, the
figured.
digestive enzyme?
Yeah. It's like 5 of those. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, the only one that may be an issue is if you're taking an enzyme that has hydrochloric acid in it, because that is there are different reasons why people have different problems. You know, if somebody over 40 comes in and says, God, you know, all I do is I eat this much food and I'm so bloated all the time, I know it's a gallbladder problem. So I might give them an enzyme that has bile in it, because that's fat digestion. But if they're constipated or they've got reflux, it might be that they need hydrochloric acid. That is the protein part of what you eat that immediately starts getting digested in your stomach, and that's where all the HCl is. If you take an enzyme that has hydrochloric acid in it, which generally young people don't need HCl, older people over 40 do, that can burn you. If you take it on an empty stomach and you start burping off and start getting indigestion, that's the only reason. But if you're taking a digestive enzyme that has a lot of pancreatic enzymes like pancreatin and lipase and chymotrypsin, all the enzymes that come from the pancreas, you should be fine. If you've got gas, you can take it.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets rid of it.
And that's the one you,
Does it have HCl?
Yeah. Which
No.
one?
Does total enzyme have HCl?
No,
No.
that's
No.
and in fact, that's a really good enzyme. I give that to little babies and breastfeeding mothers and young people that might need it, because when it comes to enzymes, there are many different reasons why you take them and many different kinds to take, but that's a plant enzyme. And plant enzymes, just like if you eat a bowl of fruit or vegetables, has a broad spectrum pH. You can digest anything from 2 up to 9, and it's very safe to give. Versus an animal enzyme that you're actually getting from animals has a smaller digestive enzyme, or pH where it will digest, but sometimes it packs more of a punch. It just depends. Yeah. So total enzyme is a plant enzyme. That's fine to take on an empty stomach. You'll know with any enzyme if you've taken too much, even if you're taking it with food, if you start, especially the HCl enzymes, if you start burping up or burning, it means you've taken too much. But I generally always just recommend 1. 2 if you're eating a really big fatty meal and you know you've got digestive gallbladder issues anyway. Okay, so it's recommended 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day, and this equates to less insulin release into the blood, therefore less fat storage hormone. I'm such a nerd.
Oh no.
Okay, anyway. All right, so refined, simple versus complex carb. Okay, so what happens when you refine a carbohydrate? What does that mean? Refined carbohydrate. Does anybody know?
Process it.
Right. You would think that someone refined is good, right?
Yeah.
Not in this
Yeah.
case. Right. Refined once started out as a complex carbohydrate, whole grain, with the fiber in it, with the bran in it, with the vitamins in it, and the minerals in it. And then, because we're so advanced of a civilization, we grind it, puff it, flake it, roll it, beat the crap out of it, beat it into submission to form any number of processed foods like cakes, donuts, rolls, white bread, pasta. Removing the complex portion of the grain, which would be the fiber and the bran, this has the effect of doing most of the work for our digestive system. So now we're not asking our digestive system to work because the machinery's already done it. Minimum effort is required for digestion. Foods are turned into sugar within minutes of being in our bodies, and insulin levels are immediately raised. These sugars get stored as fat, and the vicious cycle begins. If grains or legumes remain whole and intact, such as beans, brown rice, whole barley, the carbohydrate is broken down into sugars much more slowly due to the digestive efforts of our body on the soluble and insoluble fibers.
Okay, what's the deal with the brown rice and the arsenic?
Oh,
Because
it
they would
absorbs
say,
arsenic from the soil.
yeah. So what?
But you know what? Apple seeds have arsenic in it, which is why if you do, juicing, they tell you to take the seeds out. because you're getting a small amount of, I mean, if you think that's the only place you're getting arsenic in the world, you're wrong. It is a naturally occurring mineral. It's going to be in certain places. It's never the problem. It's all the other things that we've done. So now we've tipped the scale so much that our bodies can't even handle something like small, like arsenic and brown rice.
Okay. You said wash it.
I mean, you weren't here at the detox seminar, but what we talked about is you need to be detoxing. I mean, no human alive right now, including me, doesn't not have heavy metals in them. So it's not from the arsenic in the brown rice.
Right.
It just makes me laugh when I hear these things on TV. I'm like, oh my God, please. Why don't you talk about the pesticides and the food we're dumping on it, and the injection of bacillus thermogenesis into the DNA? I mean, they're talking about brown rice from soil. That's not the reason why there's so much cancer, autism. Do you know what I'm saying? Don't even get me started, because that just, it drives me nuts. I hear that. I'm like, okay.
Can I ask you a question before you go on?
Yeah.
I know you said this right as I was coming in, but you were saying that there's the progression of how sugar is stored as fat. It's sugar then is breaks down into glucose, right? And then glucose goes to, did you say
Goes to the
glycogen?
liver.
So it goes to the liver.
What you don't
so
use
glycogen.
immediately in the bloodstream, it goes to the liver.
So whatever you can't use, so the cells get full. Is that
Yes,
what you
the
said?
cells get full.
And then whatever's spread out then, I mean, whatever's left.
Goes to the
excess
liver.
Goes to the liver
And the liver
it's
says
stored as glycogen.
Converts it into glycogen, which is as a storage fuel.
Okay, so then so the glycogen then is stored in your muscles and
In your liver and your muscles.
your liver and your muscles.
Yes.
And then
Muscles because, in caveman time, you were dinner, right? You had to run.
You had it right.
Right.
Yeah, or you had to catch your dinner.
Right, in today's world, you're in a car and you're like, oh my God, I got it, but
Right.
that's what it's meant to do. That's why they tell you when you go to work out in the gym, the proper way to do it, this is my bodybuilding days coming back, the proper way to do it is to do weightlifting first, because you mobilize the glycogen stores out of the muscles. You've got that immediate storage fuel, and your body's saying, oh good, I've got enough glycogen in my muscles for 30 to 40 minutes to do this. This is great. And then you exhaust the muscle fuels. You don't have any glycogen in your muscles anymore. Then you do your aerobic exercise, because that's where your body will start saying, she doesn't have any storage fat. Let me start mobilizing the fat. And so you should work out with your weightlifting first, and then do your aerobics second, because you're going to burn more fat, because now you've exhausted the fuels.
okay.
The liver glycogen is meant for brain fuel, and other long-term immediate storage. If once you burned off the muscles, then it goes to the liver and says, oh crap, there's no more muscles out here. There's no more glucose in her blood. Let's go to the liver and get those storage glycogens. Storage glucose.
Okay. And then when the liver and the muscles are full, then that's when it gets stored. You said as
Gets put back
triglycerides?
into the liver again,
Is it
and this time the body
converted
says,
to
oh,
triglycerides?
storage is full. Let's pull out the triglycerides, and it starts storing it as fat now, because it has no more room to, the storage cabinet's full.
So does the glycogen get converted to triglycerides?
No, glycogen is a storage. It's a form of glucose that's been stored.
Okay.
Okay. If there's still more glucose in the bloodstream because you've eaten 3 bowls of pasta, and it's still trying to process it all out, now more glucose is going to go to the liver. The liver's going to say, oh, let me process the glycogen. Oh, that's right, it's full. Let me go to the muscle. Oh, that's right, that's full. Oh, let me bring it back to the liver again. Okay, triglycerides come out and it stores fat.
So it pulls triglycerides from your system somewhat?
It
or
makes
from
them,
your-
yeah.
it makes them.
That's how they
create-
stores it, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you get your blood sugar, I had a patient the other day, all his blood looked really, really good. His LDLs were good, his liver enzymes are good, but his triglycerides are really elevated. And he said, man, pretty good shape, like 55 or something. And I'm like, well, I knew right away it was sugar. Because anytime your triglycerides are raised, it's sugar. You're either drinking too much wine, too much alcohol, you're eating pure candy from CVS or wherever you're getting it. Often it can be alcohol intake, but in his case it was that he went to Dunkin' Donuts every morning. And had to have those donuts with a cup of coffee. And I'm like, well, your blood sugar's showing it. You can have a heart attack from having elevated triglycerides. And that damages your blood, and it damages your vessels. So,
Thanks for the sidebar.
Any more questions on that?
On that note, what is the
Coffee?
yes.
You know what? I talked about this in the detox thing. Coffee
yeah.
going in rectally is beautiful. Cause it opens up, if you're gonna do a coffee enema, it opens up that circulation, the portal vein going to the liver from the rectum, and it causes everything to start getting expelled out of the liver. It's a great detoxification tool. But going into the old pie hole, it's got acid in it, tannins.
Yeah, I can't.
It's just so stressful on the phase 1, phase 2 detoxification process of the liver. And in addition to that, it causes immediate spike in insulin, which is why people
Okay.
want to have their donut with a cup of coffee. Tastes so good, you know?
Sure does.
Yeah. That's right. And I don't make any apologies for it either.
That Jamaican blue right there, Mommy.
No, I get heartburn from coffee. I cannot.
It's acid.
No, it's
right.
acid.
Very acidic.
The other one I could take is like that Kona coffee from Hawaii. I guess it's less acid.
Mhm.
But other than that, no coffee.
You go to decaf, is that?
It does, because you don't have the caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the caffeine that causes the
It's the
insulin spike?
caffeine, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of the
The caffeine
line
causes.
between your caffeine and insulin.
Yeah.
How that reacts.
It does spike it. Okay, so glycemic load versus glycemic index. And the index is what we've been talking about. What is the load? Oops. Okay, glycemic index is how fast the sugar appears in your blood. Everybody understands that, right?
Mhm.
You eat something, it goes immediately into your blood. Glycemic load takes into account the glycemic index of a food and the serving size of a carbohydrate in the food. So you've got your glycemic index plus the portion size equals a glycemic load. So, for instance, the reason this is important is because you can have a candy bar, oh, but I just ate a little bit. The glycemic load, even though the portion size is small, all the sugar in the glycemic index that you had in that little Baby Ruth or Snickers bar is high. So it's going to give you a high glycemic index, or glycemic load. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
How to use a glycemic load. So low glycemic index foods, apples, beans, all the things that we have, we've got a big list, right? You can have a higher serving size, fruits and vegetables. You can have a whole bowl of asparagus if you want to. Higher glycemic index foods, you're going to have a lower serving size. So, like I keep saying, a bowl of pasta, I'm not saying that you can't have it.
You have a cup.
Having a side of it.
Yeah, cup.
And to make everything else your protein and your vegetables, so that you don't feel deprived. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Does size really matter? The age-old question. That's my answer.
Oh, yes.
When we eat more than our bodies can process in any one sitting, the insulin production increases in order to store the excess calories as fat. And that's even if you eat a whole bowl of protein. Anytime you're taking in more than you can use at one sitting, it gets stored as fat, which is why Thanksgiving dinner is so bad. And we eat, 4, 5, 6,000 calories sometimes in one meal, and then an hour later we muster up and go get more. Why, I don't know.
That's after the nap.
Yeah, that's
No,
why
you
you
do that
take
and
the
then
nap.
right?
That's why you take the nap. And the trip, and the
Your
trip.
belly? Right. The body can process, get this, a lot of people don't know this, this is very interesting, it might change the way you eat. The body can process only 300 to 600 calories in any one meal, depending upon the individual's basal metabolic rate and activity level. Most people always eat, 1,200, 1,500, especially if you eat a burger and fries, God knows that's 3,000 calories.
Mhm.
And is that based on essentially sedentary or normally what you would do, just regular walking
Well,
wise?
based on
Like
your
not
BMR.
before a
If you're
workout
really
or something like
sedentary,
that.
you probably like 300.
Yeah.
If you work out, if you're working out,
Well, I'm saying like
regular
working
woman.
out directly following a meal or something like that.
Yeah, no, then it would increase.
When you
Okay.
say process, do you really mean use, so that anything above that would just get
Stored as
really
fat.
stored? Okay, just, it's,
Right, what your body wants to use. I mean, and it's the same thing even with ladies that are pregnant. They always think they have to eat a whole bunch of food. I'm pregnant, I need 4,000 calories now because you only need like extra 300 calories. You don't really need that much more food. Just a good excuse to eat more.
Mhm.
Factors that make a carb low glycemic index. So these are kind of important. Presence of fiber, we've been talking about that. Things like oatmeal and beans, anything that's got fiber, fruits and vegetables. The size of the starch. Finely milled flours have a higher glycemic index than coarse flours. So in other words, things that have been processed more and broken down more, which is why steel-cut oats have a lower glycemic index than the regular oats, because they haven't, they're all hard when you get them. You have to cook them for like 30 or 40 minutes for them to be nice and soft. But they have a lower glycemic index. How long a starch has been cooked, for instance, al dente pasta has a lower glycemic index than soft-cooked pasta. So it behooves you to cook it less, because then that means the harder it is, the more your body has to break it down, and the more it will stay in the system. Presence of acids, vinaigrettes, dressings, lemons or limes. You might just want to take a lemon and squeeze it all over your baked potato if you can tolerate it, or put vinaigrette on the baked potato because it will lower the glycemic index.
Yeah, 'cause some people have just lemon and hot water in the morning.
Right. Well, that's
Is that
good for
cleansing?
gallbladder. It opens up the gallbladder, yeah. But you can still do lemon or some kind of an acid on your food just to try to lower, even if you know you're, all right, this is really bad. Salsa's not bad, yeah, that's true. Fat is okay too, which slows absorption of blood sugar down. Now fat is, fat is something that when I tell patients to increase fat, increase nuts, or olives or avocado, remember the fats are sparingly, because even though there are good fats, it's still fat, and anything overuse is going to be overkill to the body.
So you're being plant sources of fat.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Not the saturated.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but we live in a imperfect world. We're not living in utopia. If you're out having a steak, it's still saturated fat. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at least moderate it. Carbohydrates surrounded by a tough coat, such as beans and seeds, are going to have a lower glycemic index too. 5 ways to blunt your blood sugar. You can add beans. A low to medium glycemic index food brings down the rating of an entire meal. So even if you are going to have, a banana or something that's higher on glycemic index chart, you can add some beans to slow down the process, because now you've added your own fiber. You can take some psyllium fiber if you can stand it and sprinkle it on top of the meal. Sprinkle on some cinnamon. A half a teaspoon per day improves insulin uptake and glucose. So we have cinnamon capsules that we give to patients, but you can just take cinnamon and sprinkle it on there. Cinnamon will make your cell receptors more sensitive to the insulin, which is why they know now it's really good. And I do have diabetic patients that take take cinnamon, and they find they need less insulin. Add a vinaigrette to any salad or protein. Use good fat, 1 to 2 teaspoons of olive oil, canola oil, fish oil, nuts, seeds. Add some low-fat protein, which slows digestion and absorption of sugars. So that goes back to that glucagon insulin thing we were talking about, how they're inversely proportional. That's why adding the protein to the carb will help reduce the amount of insulin that's put out, because glucagon is being put out too. 5 rules to rev up your metabolism. Eat low to medium glycemic index foods. Eat 3 small meals per day with 2 snacks in between. Eat every 3 to 4 hours. Eat foods high in fiber, and of course exercise. You can't forget that part. People always think that they can do, even if you're somebody that never exercises and you start implementing this now, you're gonna lose weight. But eventually what will happen is you're gonna hit a wall where you stop losing weight, and you need to start exercising. And exercising has its benefits too, we all know. It reduces your cholesterol, it increases your heart circulation, it does a lot of good things, reduces blood pressure. So the biggest thing about this is eating the 3 small meals per day with 2 snacks in between. And the reason why this is so good is because it keeps your blood sugar level. I know I've fallen victim to this too. I'll come to work and I get so busy that I start in the morning and it's 5 o'clock, I haven't eaten all day. And by the time I finally eat, I am ravenous. I don't just eat I eat everything I can, and I don't stop until I'm like, what have I done? It's kind of like a murder, right? What have I done? You did it in the throw of passion. That's how I feel like. My God. But that's what happens when your blood sugar, you let it dip. if you do this, you're constantly keeping, I know patients that keep oranges and apples and nuts and seeds, and patients that come here because they wait so long with,
I know. I've had her. Is there any food here that I can have?
You have the supply right there.
Yeah, I
Keep
know.
hummus in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I know.
I
And
think it
eating like
Tori
family.
actually
You
suggested,
with a hummus.
Yeah, I know.
I think you've had this recently.
Tori suggested that we have a hot dog vending guy up front.
Oh,
Oh,
She
I love glycemic index.
no. I'm unhealthy.
I'll eat that a little bit.
I know I'd be making lots of money.
Truly be murder.
I know.
We've gotten better with our weights. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not as
And
bad.
bad.
We still hit sometimes.
I know, it's like,
No complaints.
Right.
no, we have gotten better.
Okay, so how much food per meal? The general plan is 1,600 calories per day. So, you know, in America, most women usually need to maintain your diet to 2,000 to 2,100 calories a day. And men, generally, it's 2,800 to 2,900 because they have more lean body mass. Their metabolisms are obviously different. But generally, if you could do 1,600 calories to 1,800, I'd say, would be good. Divided into 300-400 calorie meals. You can just kind of, you know, depending on what you decide to do, I'm just giving this to you so that you can kind of make your own and go, okay, I'm probably eating 2,500 calories. I'm going to cut down to 1,800. And then you can make your own how many more or less you should use. But divide it into 300-400 calorie meals plus 1 to 200 calorie snacks. Aim to get 50% of carbohydrates from low to medium glycemic index carbohydrate vegetables and high fiber grains. 25% from lean protein and 25% from monounsaturated fats. How to fill your plate. Divide your plate into thirds. A third of it's going to be protein. A third to 2/3 will be the non-starchy vegetables. And 1/3 are fibrous grains. Now, non-starchy, you know, if you're going to have a starchy, meaning a potato or a rice or something like that, or carrot, let's go back, carrots actually, are very starchy.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
High in
I eat
sugar.
sugar.
Oh,
Oh.
Yeah,
Even raw.
Pure sugar.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, we eat them all.
Yeah.
Even when you eat them raw, it's bad?
Yes. Oh yeah. It's not bad, but you want to
good
combine.
fiber.
Yeah, I can eat carrots and within 30 minutes I get a horrible migraine from like just too much glucose all at once. Bam. It's just there. Bad. So you're going to do a third to 2/3 non-starchy veggies and a third fibrous grains.
Which are?
Brown rice.
Oh, okay. Real grain, okay.
Yeah,
Brown
real
rice.
grains. Brown rice pasta if you want, but it's just going to be a little bit. Yams. Use fat as an add-on sparingly.
Should you have the grains? Do you,
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes.
you must have them.
You don't have to.
That's what I'm saying,
Right,
okay,
you're not
alright.
gonna-
You know, you can take this out and fill your whole plate with nothing but veggies
okay.
and protein.
Good, alright.
You can make, what I do is sometimes I'll have my grain as the wine for dinner. I'll be like, I'm not gonna have the bread, but instead I'm swapping that grain for a glass of, the glass of wine. Yeah,
Good.
cause that's what, I mean, you know, it would be the same as if I ate a thing of grapes, sorta.
Sugar difference.
Oh, you don't
She's
feel as
driving
good.
down the highway.
Yeah. Oh, did I say that? We're editing that part out right there. Okay. So protein sources.
It's cute.
So how much is the question? Generally, in most worlds are going to tell you the size of a deck of cards in the palm of your hand would be considered, you know, you're out to lunch, you're like, well, I don't know how much chicken to have, because, you know, the sizes we get now are double that, you know, but the general portion should be about the size of your hand. And they can be lean, low-fat chicken or turkey without skin, fish, egg whites, non-fat or low-fat dairy or cheese, beans and legumes. Veggies, non-starchy veggies. You can use it, pile them up, because I guarantee no one is going to be like, I had 3 plates of broccoli and I want 3 more. Right? High water and fiber veggies are higher in volume. They supply the most food without calories. Broccoli, cabbage, zucchini, spinach, kale, tomatoes, asparagus, green beans, salad greens, cucumbers. These should fill a third to two-thirds of your plate. Fruits. Nature's candy. 1 to 2 only per day. Fill up on higher volume fruits such as apples, grapefruit, berries, oranges. Avoid high glycemic fruit juices. That's the kiss of death.
Just a question, when he went off the lemonade cleanse, you know, you had to start slowly, I made a crock pot full of a soup that we put in the blender, but it had butternut squash, carrots, and sweet potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the sweet potatoes, is that,
High glycemic. I
So
think
it
it's
is.
like a 70 or an 80.
so I fed him a lot of sugars.
You did, but he hadn't eaten for 10 days.
Yeah, but I'm thinking
Or
that's
20
a
days
healthy
or whatever.
soup, and it really isn't.
People use that diet to segue into doing a raw foods diet, right? I mean, although, and then go back to normal. It's not, the thing about doing raw foods diet is more of a vegetarian
No,
way
I'm
to
just
eat.
talking about what I fed him. I was thinking that
It's
was a
all
healthy
sugar.
soup, and it wasn't.
No, it was.
I mean, to
because-
have it now, I was gonna make it this weekend for
But you
dinner.
left all the fiber in there. It wasn't like you squeezed the sweet
Yeah.
potato out and just only got the sugar. You know, when I eat a baked potato, I always leave the skin on
Right,
because that's where all the fiber is and the
So-
vitamin C.
okay. It's hard to know where to balance, what's really good and what's not good.
Am I answering your question? I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's
Throw
it's,
some cabbage in there, Barbara.
Yeah, and
It's
there's
always-
nothing real,
Do
there's
we have-
nothing bad or good.
you know what I'm saying, I mean,
100
unfortunately,
potatoes
200
has
calorie snacks
Such
in
good
it.
stuff in it.
Can you?
I
do
know,
that?
that's what I'm saying.
I should have. Excuse me one second.
but I thought carrots did too, so.
got 'em.
Vitamin
Is
A,
it
right?
already done?
Yeah, you know, it's got, I thought, you eat them fresh, it's got fiber in it, but,
Totally forgot about that.
Well, they are good, but it's just, you have to moderate them.
Yeah, to moderate, yeah, like, you have half a potato, don't have a whole potato,
yeah.
you know.
But I don't know what to eat that's gonna be.
And that's part of the problem, you
Good
think you're
snack
eating
ideas.
something healthy, and then you find out that it's not.
Right. Exactly.
Just handy to have.
Uh,
If you got enough left over, you get one.
if you have something left over, I'd like one.
And one.
Okay, Howie. Or Howie, Dewey, Howie.
Howie.
You're a patient of mine.
He's
Oh,
lucky.
you know Howie.
Yeah.
I don't know why I called you Howie, but anyway, so that is yeah, the 200. Let me see that one.
A lot of
Wow, she said 16. I've been doing 10 almonds for more. Do you have one of each, Dr. Slade?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So just some ideas for you guys to kind of take a look at. So no excuses about why you couldn't figure out what snack to eat. It's how much portion size grains. So we know protein is going to be like the deck of cards. It's going to be your palm of your hand. The grains are the portion size of your fist. Just make a little fist, and that's what your baked potato should be. That's what your thing of rice should be. That's what your pasta should be. Avoid all white bread, pasta, cakes, cookies. All of these promote inflammation within the body. Complex carbohydrates are the most calorie-dense carbohydrates you can eat, so limit whole grain servings to 2 per day. If you feel you need more energy, you can increase it 3 per day. So maybe you've been doing this and all of a sudden you're going to decide to start working out or going for an afternoon walk or running up and down the stairs 40 times. You might want to increase an extra fistful of grains at a meal if you feel like you need more, so that you're not having that feeling of like, I'm starving. But if you do this the right way and you're getting your snacks, now it's not a perfect world, I know, do the best you can. But if you have your snacks in the afternoon, you shouldn't have that dip where you just feel like you're famished. Fat sources, 1 tablespoon per meal and use sparingly. Olive oil, canola oil, flaxseed oil, nuts or seeds. Nuts and seeds, that's for most depending on which nuts you're having, but it can be anywhere from 6 to 8. Weight Watchers, I don't know what, sometimes they give you 12 or...
So 14,
14.
or it depends. I think peanuts, almonds is more.
Walnuts
You get more
So,
olives.
yeah, but
They're less
cashews are high in fat,
Yeah.
so, and I love them. But
And so a quarter of an avocado,
And it's
avocado, so you might go to a Mexican restaurant and, you know, eat all the avocado.
Guava,
That's
eat the
overkill.
guacamole.
It is. 10 olives. Avoid trans fats in processed and packaged foods. Avoid saturated fats in red meats and high-fat dairy products. And that's the issue. And red meats and the dairy are also, if you're somebody that's got arthritis or any kind of irritable bowel syndrome or any inflammation you're trying to reduce, you know, a lot of my patients, I talked about this at the detox seminar, will bring themselves off meat and just say, my joints stopped hurting. Yeah, I stopped eating
Mine
meat
have
and my
been
joints
hurting
stopped
more.
hurting.
Is it red meat or just
Red meat mostly.
red meat.
And they try to limit the chicken and turkey to maybe 1 to 2 times per week, you know,
More fish.
More fish.
yeah.
Oh, I'll try that.
And fish is not without its issues too, unfortunately,
Yeah,
nowadays,
mercury,
but, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Here's my voodoo allergy.
This is 50% of my practice, right?
Voodoo, yeah.
Don't ask me to do anything, just do it to me.
Yeah, I
I refuse to take responsibility for my own health. What
know.
happened? There it goes. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is, I just like to put this up here because it's the contrast in the food pyramid. It's the way they used to tell you to eat. USDA food pyramid focuses on food types rather than their effect on blood sugar. And this is really the way that you should be eating. So they're telling you have more bread, cereal, and rice. Right? Remember that? How they used to tell you,
Yeah.
oh, stay away from all the fats. It's fat that's making you sick, and fat that's giving you diabetes, and fat that's giving you heart disease. Eat more bread, cereal, and rice.
Yeah, right.
And in reality, it's more this way. It's more like what they call the Paleolithic diet, the way we used to eat back in caveman times. Vegetables and fruit. If you could catch a bird or a dinosaur, whatever was going on, you got some protein, right? Otherwise, your proteins came from nut and legumes. And all of these other things that you should be having sparingly. Have the grains, unrefined, and then the last thing should be the refined grains, potatoes, candy. So this is really what we're striving for, not this. You can't look to the government to give you advice about anything.
Agreed.
Don't get me started, I already said.
How
Okay.
much do they spend trying to tell us this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of our money.
Yeah.
Right, it's true. I mean, even like the CDC, you know, I always laugh at that, and they're talking about, well, the CDC said, I'm like, what has the CDC ever cured? It's a government-run agency. How effective can it be? You know, I mean, in all honesty, I think they're only effective at hiding things from the general public about what's going on
Right.
than
What?
curing
They don't wanna
anything.
start a panic.
Yeah,
Right.
Big deal.
they
Too
don't
late.
cure, they cure nothing. Basic calorie requirements based on activity level. Okay, so I put these in here because there's 2 different slides, and one is about okay. So if you don't exercise at all, you get up every day, you just go to work, you come home, blah blah, you would take your current weight and multiply it by 13. And that's going to give you the average amount of calories you need per day just to maintain your weight. Moderately active, you're going to take 16 times your current weight. And that's somebody that's 3 to 4 times a week. And if you're very active, 5 to 7 strenuous exercises, you do 19. And this is just a rough estimate. This is really, there are ways to get into the nitpicky detail about you specifically, your age, your basal metabolic rate, what your body fat index is. But if you want to go home and just say, well, she said that 2,000 to 2,100 calories is what the average female's bringing in. Most of us here probably do eat that, 2,000 at least to 2,100 per day. You can kind of calculate. This next one is a quick method to find out what your caloric needs are. It's a fast and easy method to determine calorie needs. You take your total body weight. Now they're saying a fat loss. If you actually want to lose fat, if you're active, you'll lose fat faster. It doesn't necessarily take into what your activity level is. But if you want to lose fat, they're saying do 12 to 13 calories per pound of your body weight. And that'll give you what you need. So common sense will tell you, well, if I do this and I'm exercising, I'm going to lose weight faster than if I do this, the maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would do 15 to 16 calories per body weight. So if you want to just stay at your current weight, you're like, okay, I'm happy where I'm at, I'm not really trying to put on any weight, you might want to do 15 to 16 calories. And this, if you're me, some patients are too skinny. I do have, believe it or not, don't be too envious of them, but they're trying to put on weight. And they might do 18 to 19 calories per pound of your body weight. It does take into account, I mean, we should be looking, and there are little scales that you can get. They're the true way to really find out what your basal metabolic index is, meaning how much body fat you have, is to take your entire body and dump it into a vat of water.
Right.
That's really the only true way. They've got caliper testing at the gym, and they've got scales that you can get on. You put your age, your weight, and it tells you more or less what you are. But I remember when I was getting my undergraduate degree in nutrition, there was a morning where we all had to show up in our bathing suits. How embarrassing, right? They took your body and they dumped you in this big vat of water, and they measured how much water was expelled out of there, and the whole class was watching you being put into this vat like a big giant cat. It was awful. But that is really the only true way, and since I don't have one of those vats of water in the office, I can only tell you that you need to, you can get a scale, or we can get some calipers if you're interested. I can bring them into the office, and I'll measure for you, and we can get our best guess for your body fat. But that knowing how much body fat you have will tell how much lean body mass you have, and that's important because you want more lean body mass. If you decide to take my advice and start going to the gym and lifting some weights, and you get on the scale and you go, "What's she talking about? My body weight has gone up." It's okay, because muscle does weigh more than fat.
Mm-hmm.
And muscle is more metabolically active than fat. Okay, so how many calories do you need to lose weight? We know, science has told us that 3,500 calories equals 1 pound. Healthy weight loss is 1 to 2 pounds per week. So you can do a lot of fad diets, and even with the fasting, diet, you'll lose a lot of weight quickly, but it's mostly water. If you really are losing more than 1 to 2 pounds of body mass, you're losing lean body mass, and that's not good. Mm-hmm. To lose 1 pound per week, you're going to need to decrease your total calories by 500 per day. And that's safe. So you can go back to this little chart and say, I don't know, I want to lose weight. I want to do this, average calories I need per day. Okay, it's going to say that I maybe need 1,900. I'm going to cut back to 1,850 or 1,800. You'll lose weight quicker. Just a rough estimate without having to go see a nutritionist if you want to figure it out for yourself. To lose 1 pound per week, you decrease the total calories by 500 per day. To lose 2 pounds per week, you decrease the total calories by 1,000 per day. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Decrease total calories through nutrition and exercise, right. So when you're younger, this is something I always tell, patients that are trying to get on the right track, that you can do one or the other. You can exercise. Have any of you ever done that, but you didn't change your diet? My God, I'm not getting skinny. How is that possible? I'm in the gym every single day and I'm not losing any weight, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, forget it. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to change my diet. And then you're like, all I'm eating is a cucumber for breakfast, a piece of salmon for lunch, and chicken for dinner. I'm still not losing weight. Because you get to a certain point in your life, especially if you haven't done any detox and everything's congested and the metabolism is all funky, where you need both. Sorry. I mean, that's the bottom line. I like Jillian Michaels because she's out there in people's face being like, look, I make no apologies. You need to diet and exercise, fatso. You're like, yeah. She's not candy coating. She does. She's not candy coating it, but what she says is true. Mm-hmm. I mean, you do. I'm not telling you to do something that's bad for your health. So, diet and exercise. Okay. Supplements to reduce glycemic index. We talked about the fiber. Fiber slows down digestion, allows sugar to trickle more slowly into the bloodstream, prevents excess body storage, makes you feel fuller longer, absorbs toxins out of the colon. There's so many good things about fiber. Reduces cholesterol. Fish oil will help transform carbs into glucose and is also really good for the vessels and brain and heart. Alpha-lipoic acid is a fatty acid that converts glucose into sugar, which alpha-lipoic acid is awesome. These two things are so good together. In fact, you're taking the 4-H Body talks about alpha-lipoic acid in green tea. It's a diet book that's out there. But alpha-lipoic acid for years, we've been using it to help sensitize the cells, in this office, I mean, for years, and probably other places too, but to sensitize the cells to insulin. Gives you energy, it does help convert glucose into energy. It is a free radical manufacturer. It will reproduce vitamin C and vitamin E. There's a lot of great things about alpha lipoic acid. And it's a free radical scavenger. Gets all the cancer cells and all that stuff that are trying to form even as we speak. Green tea extract blunts insulin response to meals to encourage fat burning. So that's one of them that's been, and for years it was in diet pills, and probably still is if you go to GNC. It's one of the items in the fat burning is green tea extract. What I generally suggest is that you take one of these at every meal. You can drink green tea. Green tea, some patients have asked me about that, but it's not as convenient. There's nothing wrong with doing it. You still get great benefits. But you can't carry around, sometimes what I used to do is carry my alpha lipoic acid and my green tea extract in my purse, so every time I sat down to a meal I would just take one. And this one does help reduce sugar cravings too. L-glutamine, another one that reduces sugar cravings. Improves carbohydrate metabolism to lower glycemic impact on food. L-glutamine is good for a couple of reasons. Because it reduces the carbohydrate metabolism, it is one that I give to patients that have sugar cravings. It's one that I give to patients that are coming off alcohol, that are trying to reduce the sugar. Once you bring yourself, if you're somebody who's done frequent alcohol intake, you want to replace it then with ice cream and candy. Your body's craving that sugar replacement, and L-glutamine is really good at that. L-glutamine is also really good at providing spackle to the small intestine. So people that have leaky gut issues or digestive issue, which pretty much everybody does, helps go and fill those little gaps in the intestines. Any questions about any of those? And L-glutamine is one that we talked about actually, at the detoxification center. The Vanachrome, right. No, I did not. So there is, and this slide is about exercise. You know, obviously, I just keep putting this in there because I know some of you guys are exercising, some of you guys aren't. I won't name names. But the exercise is key. So there is, if you look in your packet, your little packet of, do I have one of those?
I gave Dewey mine, so there's actually.
I don't really need it actually.
There is another whole set in there. In the bag there, you'll see the Office Depot bag on my desk.
In the bag.
Yeah, inside of it. That's just the larger
I just want you guys to take a look. We're almost done with these slides, but I want to go through
larger and more pages.
the glycemic index food chart. If you can just see some of these things, we put this in there and we made it nice and colorful for you because I want you all to keep it close to you so that you can take a look when you're at places because it makes the difference. It really, really does. You can look at some of the things in some of your favorite foods. There's one that I wanted to point out.
Pound cake is low?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here I was surprised.
Yeah.
Like the low meat.
Waffles are really high, even low fat
butter?
waffles are high.
Well, it's not the fat. Yeah, low fat are going to be even higher. Remember, because you don't have the fat to slow up the glucose, the sugar.
Oh, okay.
It's
That's
pure
why
sugar.
whenever I bought the low fat waffles an hour later after I eat them, I'm hungry.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
Well, but yeah, you got to think about that. It's not, you go into the grocery store and they try to lure you in by saying low fat, but if it says low fat, it means high sugar.
okay.
Yeah, they replaced it.
Or it means they've added NutraSweet or aspartame or artificial sweetener to it, and that's bad too.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just take things at face value like that. So do you get something like a cheese pizza? You'd be like, ooh, but it's so fat. Cheese pizza has
Exactly,
cheese on
good.
it. Right, it's got the fat, so you're gonna, you can eat a piece of cheese and you're like, ugh, you just feel so full. I'm not advocating that you should eat a piece of cheese pizza. I'm just saying
It's
It's
better
better
than
than
some of the other,
10
like,
low-fat waffles that you're thinking about having.
I know. Let me come up with
Right.
I don't feel like dinner.
Dr. Selmy, are you in favor of doing the nuts prior to meals? I mean, like, there are some, diets that really encourage that for lowering your, so you're not as hungry at the meals. To do those
Sure.
6 walnuts before a meal.
Yeah, because
or-
walnuts have fiber and they've got fat.
Okay.
So just don't, I mean, if the one thing I can say about nuts, don't overdo it.
Right.
I have all these patients that come in and they're like, I started adding nuts and now I'm all fat. And I'm like, well, how much are you eating? Like, I don't know, like 30 or 40. Like, 30 or 40
I know,
nuts?
so you wouldn't be able to
just
do it
no,
after,
no, I mean-
before every meal. You could do it at once.
That's what I was gonna say, should you just do it at one meal maybe?
Yeah.
Like, 'cause
Sure.
Or
I have-
split it. You could
You know
split
what,
it, I
you can,
guess.
I've got patients that keep a little bag.
Yeah.
The easiest way to make sure, I mean, it is hard to start eating nuts and not just keep going, these are really good. If you like nuts, like almonds
Yeah, I
or something,
like nuts.
take them out of the bag and get them away from there and bring them with
Put 'em in
you,
a snack
right?
size.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
also, if you're doing it just before you eat, you're actually gonna sit down or something and have an actual meal. I think you're not as inclined to just keep sitting there and keep eating them. You eat what you're supposed to eat, stop, and then you eat your food.
Right, exactly.
You don't feel as
Like a
hungry.
little appetizer kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that really is supposed to be pretty good. I don't know. It just was.
If I can add one thing.
Yeah.
Unsalted nuts, raw nuts,
Right.
not cooked, not
Yes,
any.
very good, Janice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Raw.
That's the other thing. I do mine at breakfast. I do almonds.
You do, is that all that you eat?
Occasionally 3 or 4
Okay.
pecans at lunch with my sandwich, because I
Right.
really like pecans, but according to my allergy thing, I'm not supposed to have that.
Yeah.
So I stick mostly with almonds, but all raw, make
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, that's good,
Yeah.
I
Janice.
heard that toasting nuts was good for them.
Yeah.
Make it easier to digest. Is that not true? Is it better to eat them raw?
Yeah, but that's because of the coating. You know, I mean, some of the nut. That's the thing about nuts and beans is it's got that hard. That's what makes the glycemic index of them go low because it's hard to digest. But that's also kind of what gives you gas and bloating. So if you have an issue, you know, I talked about this last time. BINO or digestive enzyme that has that alpha galactosidase in it is the digestive enzyme that breaks up that same thing as soaking beans. You know, they tell you to do that before you cook them. Yeah, that's the reason why.
I have another question on the carrots. I'm
Yeah.
on the root crops.
Mm-hmm.
It says cooked carrots are low.
Right,
But they're not, they're still a starch.
but they
Is that
still,
what you-
it's still.
Still sugar.
Yes, they still go into the bloodstream
Yeah.
quickly, fast. It's the highest sugar index that you can do. It's a very sugary, very sugary. And
But
cooked
this-
carrots are worse.
But this has low glycemic.
Let me see that. I
Here.
can't. Thank you.
Mhm.
Cooked carrots. Yeah. It does have the carrots at 39.
So, and it says cooked.
Well,
Right.
remember, so this is the best. Remember that this is comparing it to pure sugar.
Right, so yeah, everything you get, yeah, you gotta take all that into consideration.
What's the wrong ones? Do we have them?
Yep.
Is the higher in sugar once you cook them?
Oh, sure they'd be higher in sugar, of course.
Yeah.
Everything is, of course.
Okay.
All right. So, any questions about anything that we've talked about? Does everybody understand?
Skins, they're just good for fiber, right? On your,
For
from your
protein
fruits and
rich.
vegetables, as long as you wash them really good.
Yeah. I mean, some are going to be harder to digest. Like some people can't digest the skin of a cucumber.
That's the
Makes
one I
them.
have a hard time with.
Just
How does
peel
that
it.
Really?
Yeah, peel it because it's waxy and it's
Okay.
absolutely.
I like
I had heard that potatoes too, that you shouldn't eat the skins because they're nightshade vegetables and that they actually have some natural, you know,
Alkaloids and they've got
and
things.
things to avoid like pesticides, natural pesticides.
They are. That's why some people will eat them and have an allergy to them and throw up. I can eat eggplant within 8 hours. I'm throwing up violently. Just one big like and once it's out, I'm done. I never eat eggplant because I have a bad allergy to the skin of it. But if I eat baba ganoush,
Yeah,
it's already been processed up.
you're okay.
I can do it.
I have that problem with
Yeah,
pineapple.
this is,
Yeah.
on the snacks and sweets, it's interesting, I know, you gotta take it the way it's meant, but it gives you on the low end M&Ms, Snickers.
Right. It does, but that's what we were talking about. Remember, it goes to the load, the glycemic load.
You have to put it all
High
together.
glycemic index, but if you eat small amounts, I mean, you can only have small amounts, you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, you've gotta put it together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm throwing a lot at you too, Dr. Salome, but I'm curious because in the Caribbean, they say the reason they never die of heart disease is because of coconut. They drink the coconut water, the coconut milk, they drink
Mhm.
the
It's
coconut gel.
monounsaturated, I mean, the,
It's the
medium
latest
chain,
fad,
Is it
too.
a really good one to be using virgin coconut, like,
It is, but it is still
It's
fat.
still fat?
Fat.
But yes, it
Yeah.
does, that is one of the fats that they tell you that if you do, you actually help burn fat. You can cook with a little bit of, coconut oil and it's great. It does taste really coconutty,
Right.
but yeah, that's a really good fat. It's used sparingly, can actually help you burn fat. It's a medium chain triglyceride.
Okay. So why is white spaghetti lower than like meat spaghetti?
White spaghetti,
Yeah.
It's higher than meatball ravioli.
yeah.
Oh wait, whole wheat spaghetti. Okay, this is durum wheat spaghetti. Maybe that's it.
I'm not,
And under pasta.
want water.
Okay. There's two different kinds of wheat. That's why it
Protein,
probably
has anybody had the
is.
protein enriched spaghetti? I wonder what that tastes like.
Not tried it.
I've had the one that's enriched with the omega 3s. It's like Barilla Plus.
Which one?
Barilla Plus that's
Is it wheat?
enriched with omega 3s.
I've done the whole wheat enriched. I mean, I don't know if they taste any different.
I don't
And I think
it
that's
does.
partially
What is
whole wheat.
Barilla, what is that?
It's enriched with
Grain?
no, it's that's a brand.
it?
It's
Pasta brand.
it's
It's
enriched
Italian.
with omega 3s.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what they say anyway, but
Alright guys, well, any other questions? Does everybody kind of understand the concepts now? Alright, and if anybody's interested, we do have the green tea extract and the alpha lipoic that I would suggest to start trying. There's a book out there called The 4-Hour Body Diet that actually uses that. And
Did you read that?
that actually uses the, part of what they say is to use a polycostinol because it helps reduce cholesterol.
What is that? Polyculture, are we talking about?
No, we haven't talked about polycostinol. It's another one of those things that will help reduce cholesterol and, but he uses the alpha lipoic acid and he uses the green tea extract. In my office, I don't use alpha, I use R-lipoic because it's more, it is more, active, biologically active as opposed to the alpha. And a lot of people are starting to get away from the alpha lipoic acids, but I find you need less of it. You take one of these and one of these every time you eat, and it really does help start to increase the metabolic rate of your body and help reduce sugar cravings, and it just makes a world of difference.
An enzyme won't interfere, right?
No, not at all, not at all. An enzyme is something completely separate and different.
I want to.
So everybody has the calorie snacks.
definitely want those.
So what I'd recommend is
Because
to
I
take
still
these out and
know
put this on your
I've
refrigerator so
gotten
that you
to that.
remind yourself about it, or make a copy of it and bring it to the grocery store with you. Everybody eventually finds, what it is that they like or what their thing is. But it's, I just find it's really helpful for patients to have that as an example for what they should eat. If you come up with something else on your own, go for it, whatever works.
Do you know why microwave potatoes are higher than steamed potatoes?
Microwave potatoes are higher than steamed, higher in glycemic index,
I think,
because the sugar, it's already been broken down.
so the microwaving.
Yeah, it already does, it's the same
Just
thing
less
as
bake.
processing.
Just
Yeah,
less bake.
exactly.
No, don't like
And parsnips
potatoes.
are
I
very
do
high.
that.
It's a root vegetable, the starchiness. Which is one of those things, so speaking of that, you can use those, just don't eat as much of them. They're very dense caloric wise, so you don't need, same thing as like a potato that's very starchy or a sweet potato. You know, you don't need the whole thing. I mean, just a
Yeah,
small
half,
quarter of it
yeah.
is, or even a quarter is packed with sugar, good stuff, but just eat a little bit. And it's not saying you can't have it.
And being a root vegetable, it's good because it's got the fiber.
Absolutely.
So that's all
Right.
part of it.
So
Right,
good.
but you gotta take that into consideration, right?
Right.
Versus the
Right.
Snickers bar might be lower, but it's, you don't, right.
And using the tea and the
Alpha,
alpha
Arlipa.
before each meal, would I still use the, whatever it is, I'm sorry, I forget what it is that I take, that you have in your purse? I talked
The
about-
enzyme, the
Yeah.
Hypo D,
Take it all
yes.
together,
Yeah, cause the Hypo D's not that. The Hypo D is to
Right.
help you digest your food.
right.
That's all that is. If you're not eating, don't take it.
No, but okay, but you can take all three together, is what I'm
Okay,
Yes.
and do you have to you take them right before you eat, or do you have to do it like in 20 minutes, which always gets me because I
no,
can't.
No, I take it right
Yeah, I
before I
don't
eat.
remember.
I mean, the only
Okay,
thing
yeah,
about the
I
20
can't
minutes-
remember.
That's
I can't
probiotic
remember.
story. The only thing I really, and even with that, with the
And then
probiotics, take it anyway. If you are eating and you're like, oh crap, it's not been 20 minutes, take it anyway. You're still gonna get a lot of benefit
Okay,
from it.
okay.
What about the
good, 'cause
probiotics
I
you
always forget if it's 20 minutes.
Probiotics are generally, we recommend that you take them 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes before you eat.
Okay, we usually take it before we go to bed, or.
That's
first thing in the
fine,
morning. Okay,
that's
yeah,
fine,
right,
first
okay.
thing in the morning for you, but
Yeah.
even, like I was telling Dory, even if you take it with food, probiotics are really, that's just a really good
Taking
thing,
it's better than not taking it.
Oh, definitely.
yeah.
If you
Like a
can't
red
get it
and-
in a half hour before you.
Probiotics is one of those things that I recommend with enzymes nowadays for everybody because of your immune system. I mean, and you can use that in a lot, if you were to go get a colon hydrotherapy, has anybody ever had a colon hydrotherapy? Yeah,
Looked into them, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
nobody in here had, except you? Wow.
The
Irrigating the
Water,
colon with the
yeah.
The
water.
kids had those when they were.
They're
younger,
awesome.
Yeah.
They're great, they're so good.
Where do you go for that? You can recommend somebody?
Yeah, there's somebody, there's a couple different people, there's somebody over here, but they use a closed system and I don't like it.
And it's cleansing the.
It is, it cleans out the
How far
colon.
up does it?
It only goes about,
The lower.
the initial, it just kinda maybe goes this much initially, although it feels like it's in your throat, you're like, oh my
I
god.
haven't gone down enough. Yeah.
And you can do your own also.
You can do your own, which is good, but it's the thing about that is you can only do so much water, but you can buy units. I've got a I think, what's the name? There's a website called colonet.com, and you can actually buy your own home system. It doesn't irrigate as much water, but if you go to one of these units, they'll do like 30 gallons where a closed unit, which is called a water angel, you're able to sit in the room, it's a comfortable unit, you can put water in and expel water out, put water in, expel, at your own comfort, versus an open system where the colon therapist stays in there, massages your colon for you, and I've had them both done. The latter way is much more, I mean, I'm just a private pooper, sorry, I don't want anybody in the room with me.
Well, you're probably more relaxed, I would think, and everything.
Well,
is
some
sold a
people
little
feel
bit.
the other way around,
Oh.
but the whole point of it is that, yes, I think they're wonderful. One of the things that they do at the very end is they input probiotics into your intestines, into your colon. And you can actually do that with the capsules too. Patients that have C. difficile or any kind of serious diarrhea coming out of trauma surgery, vaginal yeast infections, you can insert a probiotic capsule 1-3 times a day. You're still getting the probiotics in the same direction. The body just breaks down the capsule and absorbs it.
And how often, if you're just starting that, how often do you have?
Do a colon hydrotherapist will recommend generally 2 sessions per week for 4 weeks, and then 1 session per week for the next 4 weeks, for a total of 8. And the first time I ever had one done, it was probably 20 years ago, and I 2 days later became sick as a dog. Oh, I was so sick.
Because of the poison?
Yeah, my liver was just, I had cold, chills, flus, I was in bed for 3 days sick. And so I got scared, I didn't want to go back, and I've learned a lot since then. I probably should have gone back to expel more, but by me not going back, it took my body longer to get rid of it. And since then, I've had it done and I've been fine. I've been fine. But they'll tell you that if you're getting sick, a cold and flu, just like your grandma used to say, do an enema, you're getting your flu. It's
Yeah, that
true.
was my dog.
It's true. It is true.
And even detoxing, that's what that does. Sometimes it pulls up the stuff that you get sick and you think, oh, I'm not gonna do this anymore. Well, guess what? That's why you need to do it.
Right, that's exactly why you need to
Right,
do it.
right.
Yeah, no question about it.
Unfortunately.
And if it happens, it's just telling you that you're just toxic. I mean, there's nothing, I know it's not the most comfortable subject to talk about, but it's needed. Any other questions?
What's
So
the
they're
deal
saying-
about yeast infections? Because I have something going on. I don't know what it is, but you can actually take the capsule. And do you break the capsule?
No, you just insert it vaginally.
Really?
Yeah. 1-3 times a day. The body will, you know, the body is
It'll break
warm.
down?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll melt
the
it,
capsule,
and then it'll
absorb
melt the
probiotic.
capsule.
Wow.
Okay, we'll try it. We'll try it before bed in case it doesn't melt the
Well,
capsule.
And over the weekend. as
That's
well.
what we're gonna do. Yeah.
No, it will. I mean, you could do it and go to work. You'd be fine. I mean, it does. It just melts and
The commercial
that's all there is
stuff's
to it.
not
Yeah.
working.
And it's another way of getting the good bacteria. And somebody that's had a high amount of probiotic or antibiotics, and they, you know, get a yeast infection or they get diarrhea, or you can.
No,
do
I
that.
always take it. Yeah. No,
So,
I'm
and
like
everybody should be
doubling,
taking it every day.
tripling.
I mean, if you have those events where you have to take an antibiotic or you've got whatever, you can take more, but you should be taking at least 1 capsule every day, regardless.
Mm-hmm. Try that.
Any other
Try.
questions?
And how about the water alkalization? That's pretty important too, right?
Yeah. Well, there's units for that you can get. You can,
Do
you
you
know.
go on your whole water system in your home or just on like your tap water?
There's so many out there now, but the one I have at my house is on my tap water in my kitchen sink. So you can change the pH to go from 7, 8, 9. You have to be careful when you start increasing the pH in your body, even though it's a good thing. It'll cause your body to detox. And also, if you get too alkaline in your system and you're drinking alkaline water with food, you won't really digest your food because you do want your stomach to be a pH of 2. I mean, it's good to have the stomach a pH of 2. So you don't recommend alkaline water when you're eating. But other than that, if you decide to do it, you're gonna some people feel better at pH of 7, some people 8, some people 9. Personally, I just stopped at 8. When I started to go up to 9, I felt like I could feel my heart fluttering and things were really detox. It was a little bit too much for me. I felt good at 8. I feel
Is
good
that
at
why
8.
they say don't use it? A lot of times water, during a meal, like drinking.
Alkaline water, that's why, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it negates the acid in your stomach and you won't digest anything that needs acid, which is protein. And if you don't have, that's why you supplement patients with hydrochloric acid when they're reduced, because they don't have it. Like little old people in nursing homes, you know, because they've lost so much of their protein enzymes, they're eating this much food and saying, oh no, I'm full. They really
Yeah,
are.
that's my father.
And they can't eat anymore. They're full. They don't have any more power for that. So you could take a little capsule of plant enzymes and put it on their food for them. It would help them. May not want him. He might not still want any more food, but it would help the food he does intake.
Mm-hmm. We're doing a lot of Greek yogurt.
My mother's mother lived to be 102,
Oh.
and she ate, well, I think now she ate that Mediterranean diet of the olive oil.
Paleolithic.
She
It's
baked-
great.
She baked everything, you know, the veggies were crunchy, but she had an appetite till literally, she got sick, or she's 3 months before she died. She started going downhill. That was at 102. She was a week before her 102nd birthday. But I think to myself, she ate like a horse. I mean,
She
wasn't-
did, really?
She wasn't really fat. She was, you kind of know, but she would sit there and just go to restaurant. I loved taking her out to eat. And I thought, I wish I had really watched her more carefully, what she ate and what she did, because she had something.
She had it going on, and she made it 102.
Yes, she really did. My generation, my cousins, we all sit around going, what did she do? What did she do?
Yeah.
Maybe it was just that she lived in a better time.
Had her glass of wine. You know her advice to me was, don't
Vegetables
worry,
were real
vegetables.
Real vegetables.
Well, that's very true.
She said what?
Don't
No,
worry,
really.
makes you old.
That's very true.
And she said, at the end of the day, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when everything was done, my meal was ready, I changed my apron and sat on the porch. Those were the little advices that she would give me. But
Amazing.
and she had a natural cure for everything. I was pregnant, my kids the other 2 got catalyzed at school. I couldn't use the shampoo, and I got it. And she was like, no, olive oil and this and that, and your hair will look gorgeous when it's done. And sure, she's put a plastic
Yeah,
bag in
mayonnaise,
this
but that never worked.
It drowns them.
and she,
Yeah.
and my hair did look good, I got room. I wish, you know, when I'm
Yeah,
listening to all this, I'm sure she's eating
knew what
foods
she was
and things
talking
like
about.
that.
Yeah, she knew.
She was
Well, I
like,
mean, all of this is really sound advice, but the drawback to what the world that we live in, is there are things that are going out externally that we have no control over. Unless you move out west and have your own vegetable farm in your backyard, and how you can control the government does, and the air and the water, and, you know. That's where the detoxification stuff comes into play. So anyway, any other questions? You guys are good stuff. All right.
Just a report yesterday, it's a little bit, sidebar, but not too far, that, report on NPR yesterday that, they found that different sorts of air pollution, small and pore size particles, they just completed a study that tied back, both those to higher rates of dementia and quicker rates of mental decline, so somehow.
Yeah, but did they give any good advice on how to get rid of it?
No.
No. So that's
Once you know you have it. So.
It was just a survey.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's just and because we live in DC, God knows what we're really absorbing. I mean, it's better, I think, we don't know. I mean, maybe we should be
worry all
thanking the
the time.
CDC
We
for
worry.
the ignorance.
And we have unprecedented levels of exposure to plastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that last time too. Vicki, tell them what you do for a living.
Oh, I work for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
So you know all that stuff about.
Well, I don't, I'm actually, I'm a type of geologist, I field is geophysics, so I do other things like mapping, so, so I don't really work on that stuff,
But you're exposed to a lot of that information where when she comes in, always asking her questions about, tell me about the water in Antarctica. How bad is it exactly? I know you know something. Don't I?
And they don't tell us this, the news never has anything about,
No, they don't.
maybe they lose all their sponsors and
Well, it's, you know,
only
Sponsored by-
give you enough information that they.
Or this
And-
study, or that, you know, and it's like, well, how many people did you know, what was the sample size? You know, it's like 20 people got
But
cancer
you ever watch
because.
Good Morning America when you've got Nancy Snyderman on there, and she's like, well, recent studies, this was just
Yeah.
like showing that if you take probiotics, and the news person's like, really, some probiotics? I say, oh yes, medicine is now reduced, and I'm just like, okay, thank you, Nancy Snyderman.
Well, yeah, well, that
confidential.
studies
Right,
have come
right,
around.
exactly.
Thanks for catching up.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, well, thank you
I have
all
to
for
get
coming.
some
You were
stuff.
very,
yeah, that's
very
great.
interactive. I always appreciate that. I hope that it
And
made sense to
everyone will
everybody
get-
and you learned something
Everyone
good.
will get a copy of this.
Yes, we'll
that's here
send you the
today.
we'll send
You'll
you the
get-
PowerPoint
it
through
will be
PDF.
emailed to
Oh,
you.
good.
So this is the,
Just make
Our
sure that you
electronic-
have your.
That's
your
electronic
email address
address
and
is
everything.
easy.